Hey everybody, Michelle here in Northern Illinois Zone 5. I'm over at my house. It is a cool, crisp October morning. It's kind of towards the end of October, and here in Zone 5, it's the perfect time to get our bulbs in the ground. We want temperatures to be in the 60s or lower consistently because we don't want our bulbs to grow after we put them in the ground. And today we're going to talk about some strategic places to put them, some great combinations, and then the proper way to get them in the ground. So come with me as we plant some bulbs around my house. It's going to be really fun. Let's go. So there's all kinds of mumbo jumbo that I could teach you about bulbs and the scientific stuff, but I really don't think you want to know that. I think you just want to know, how do I plant them and how do I make them look good and how do I take care of them? So that's what we're going to talk about. They really fall into two groups. You have your fall bulbs that you plant now and they bloom in the spring. Then you have your spring bulbs that you plant and those will bloom in the summer. Today we're just talking about fall bulbs that we're going to put in that will bloom in the spring because obviously it's fall and that now is the time to do it. So earlier I said that, you know what, the temperatures need to be 60 or below during the day. At nighttime, you're really looking for those 40s and 50s and you don't want the ground to freeze yet. That's when you know it's time to put it in. Here in Zone 5, we're looking at like the last week in October through probably the first or second week in November. Let's say you missed that window. No big deal. Put them in the ground anyways. They'll probably grow. And later in the year, if you totally forget, I can show you how to force them as well. And I can cover that later in another video. So the bulbs that we're going to plant now are considered hardy bulbs. And what they do is they have to go through a period of cold. And they need that to be able to produce in the spring. And what you do is you put them in the ground now. They go through that cold period through the winter. And then they sprout up in the spring. They grow, they bloom, and then you let the foliage die back, and then you let the sun energize that foliage, which recharges the bulb so that next year it'll grow again and it sleeps during the summer. So that's kind of the life cycle of the bulbs that you're getting. Now, maybe you got your bulbs already, or maybe you're in an area where it's not cold enough yet to put them in the ground. You want to put them in a cool place, like a refrigerator. The biggest thing is if you're storing them in a refrigerator, don't store them with fruit. They don't like to be next to each other. Typically, if you're ordering like from the internet, they'll usually send them pretty close to the time that they're supposed to be planted. If you're buying them in the store, just make sure you inspect them. Make sure they don't have bugs in them. Make sure that they're not soft or mushy or they put off any kind of odor, that they're nice and firm. And I always count to make sure that all of the ones that they say are in the bag are in the bag. There's been a couple times I've gone to a box store and I bought one and it didn't have all of the bulbs in there. So I guess I always like feel in the bag and I count them so I know they're all there. Now, you might live in an area where it doesn't get cold enough in the winter for you to be able to do bulbs. And I'm so sad that you can't have that because bulbs are totally awesome and I love them. I'm sure that there's some way that you can do it down south. I don't know what that is. I do know that if they don't have that cold period though, they're not going to grow. So for me, I like tulips. Now, a lot of people will tell you that they'll plant tulips as an annual. I have a tendency to treat these as an annual as well. If they come back the following year, great. If they don't, well, so sad. We have squirrels and squirrels like tulip bulbs and I've tried a lot of different things, from planting them in the ground and putting repellent on top of it to putting a grid on top of it through the winter so they don't dig them up. I've tried a lot of things and now I just get to the point where I put them in the ground and if they come up, great, and if they don't, they don't. I usually get at least one good year out of them, and then they aren't the greatest at coming back the next year and reblooming, even though I don't cut the foliage down, even though I do all the fertilizing when I'm supposed to. They aren't as hardy as some of the other bulbs out there. So I have a tendency to treat them like an annual. I put them where I want them to put. I put them where I want them. And then if they come back, great. And if they don't, oh well, they're not that expensive. So I kind of treat these like an annual. Now, daffodils, on the other hand, I will plant these in areas where they can naturalize because the squirrels won't dig these up and eat them. So for me, I like daffodils because one, they come up pretty early and you can buy early blooming and late blooming daffodils. I like both kinds because then I get that nice pretty color in the spring when I'm looking for some color. But then they multiply really nice too. And I can put them in areas of the shade before the leaf foliage blooms out on my trees, so they're getting enough sun that they look gorgeous. And so I always like to put these where I know I can see them, or I know I'm going to be in that spot of my garden so I can enjoy them. I just like the little nodding look of these, and I like the yellow ones, and then I'll always buy some of the mixed ones as well. And this one here is actually called King Alfred, and these are I think these are the little minis. So I got both kinds, and I'm going to plant them in drifts. What I mean is I'm going to plant a whole bunch in the same area at the same time. You can get bulbs in a lot of places. You can get them at your garden centers. You can get them at box stores. You can get them through the mail. And I'd say if you're looking for like unusual ones, that's where you would use the mail order, mostly because, you know, they're going to have a wider selection than you're ever going to find in any of the garden centers. Even my garden center doesn't carry a great big selection. We have enough that satisfies the needs of the people looking for them. And the box stores just kind of carry the, you know, the same old every year, which are great, but you might not find that special one that you're looking for. Color Blends is a source that you can use that I know is very reputable if you're looking for bulbs from mail order. And so I have bought from them in the past, and I've had great luck with their bulbs. This year, I'm going to be planting all of the leftover bulbs that didn't get bought out in the store. So even though I'm going to put some of them in the ground right now, it'll probably be another 2 weeks before I put the bulk of them in the ground, because I want to sell as many of them as I can, and then whatever's left, that's what I'll put in the ground. But one of the things that I want to do today is I want to walk around and show you what I do to kind of strategically look for those places to put the bulbs, so that when I'm waiting for the foliage to die back in the spring, which is, you definitely have to do that, because that's what's feeding and energizing that bulb, so that next year you'll get another flower, or the following year. I don't like the way that foliage looks in the garden. I hate it. I hate the way you have to wait for it to die back, and it's all ratty and it's yellow and it's, I don't like it. So I always walk around my garden. Now is the perfect time, because everything hasn't died yet. I've only had a couple light frosts, so the things that look the worst in my garden are some of the containers, which are dying back. But most of my plants still look good. They still are in good shape, good size, and I can strategically plant bulbs underneath things, and I can underplant so that when the bulbs come up, they bloom, but then that shrub that I cut back to the ground, or maybe it was a perennial that I cut back to the ground, that foliage will come up and hide the dying foliage of the bulb. And now is a great time to walk around and look for those spots. Now, I buy from a wholesale grower. I buy from Netherland Bulb Company, and so I like to buy the big blends like this. You get like 50 tulips in a bag, and then all of the colors are already pre-blended and pre-mixed in the bag. And I like to plant a big drift of 50 all together, or 25. I don't like to do one. I don't like the way that looks when they come up in the garden, so I like to group mine, and I'll dig out a hole and lay them all in there, cover them up with some good compost, and then make sure they have good drainage, and then let them come up as a big drift or a big group in the fall or in the spring. The other thing is, if the squirrels get a couple of them, I don't lose, you know, that whole area and that look that I'm going for. So I like to buy the bags that have the color blends already together. So this one is called the Royal Prince Mix. It's got 50 tulips in it, and it's got a blend of the yellow, the dark purple, and the light purple, and I really like this look. So this will be one of the ones that we're going to put in. And right now, I think there's like 10 bags of these in the store. So I don't know, we'll see how many are left. I know I'm going to pull at least one bag for me, but if there's more than that left, then we'll create more of these drifts throughout the garden. Today, we're going to look for the spots of where we're going to put them though. So this is a tulip bulb here, and as you can see, it's got this papery outer coating on here, and this is called the tunic. And that's what helps protect your bulb from scarring and marks and things like that, so you don't want to pull that off. There is also a top and a bottom to your bulb, and so sometimes you look at the bulb and you think that the pointy end is the bottom and that should go down, but that's actually your growing tip, and that goes up. And then if you look at the bottom, see, it's going to have, looks like there's like roots there, and that's what's going to go down. Now, a lot of people will say if you put them upside down in the hole, they'll right themselves right side up and grow. I don't know if that works or not. I just don't plant mine upside down. I know when I do it in pots, if I plant them upside down, I've never seen them right themselves right back up. I just plant them the right way the first time. And so the other rule of thumb is however tall your bulb is. So if this is a 2-inch bulb or a 1-inch bulb or a 3-inch bulb or whatever it is, you want to double that number, and that's how deep it should go. So if this is a 2-inch bulb, I multiply that by 2, this should be 4 inches in the ground. Now a daffodil bulb is bigger. So if I have, you know, a 3-inch bulb, then I multiply that by 2, that needs to be 6 inches in the ground. So that's pretty much your rule of thumb with the bulbs. The other thing is your bulbs will come in some kind of packing material like this. And so the packing material is just to protect the bulb so it doesn't get damaged in shipping. And so one of the things is you want to keep your bulbs, you know, dry. And so that's the other purpose of the packing material. Now this is a crocus bulb, and again, you can see, like, look, there's already a little grow point on here, and this is going up, and then this is the bottom going down. Now, one of the things that you can do when you're planting smaller bulbs, because they don't have to go as deep, is you can do what's called layered planting. And you can plant your your bigger bulbs lower, because like this is going to go 4 inches. And then if I had a daffodil that's going to be 6 inches and a crocus that only has to be 2 inches, I can actually plant all 3 bulbs in the same hole at different depths, and then they'll all come up and interplant in the same area, and you'll have blooms either overlapping or one right after the other. So that's another technique that you can do as well, especially if you have a really small garden and you want to have really big impact and you want to keep that bulb thing going for a long period of time. Now, the downside to that is you really can't plant anything in that spot because you've pretty much used all the layers of dirt for these, but you can certainly plant it right next to something so that all the foliage, when it's dying back, the new thing's coming up, hides all the foliage, and there you go. How awesome is that? And it works great in pots. Okay, so let's get our soil ready. So what I'm going to do is I dig like a great big hole, and then I amend that hole with compost, and then I settle all of my bulbs in there. Now, I do fertilize mine. Some people will tell you not to do that. I do, and you won't really see the benefits of that fertilizer in your first year. When you see the benefits of that fertilizer is the second year. Usually bulbs that were fertilized at the time of planting will have more vigorous growth, and they'll also have larger flowers. I like to use biotone fertilizer because then I know that it's not going to burn the bulbs in any way, shape, or form, and it seems to work really well for me. The other thing is you do want to avoid high nitrogen fertilizers because that can actually push faster growth and weak stems, and it can cause your bulb to split. So you don't want to use that first number is always the nitrogen number. You want the middle number to be bigger, like a 5, 10, 5 would be perfect. The other thing is don't throw the fertilizer in the hole. I know you see that out there, but that will kind of burn your bulbs. Now, I don't think the biotone will burn because it's organic, but if you're using like a synthetic fertilizer, do not throw that in the hole. You're going to sprinkle that on top and work it in, and then water your bulbs after you covered them with some good compost and soil. Some people swear by bone meal. I mean, I don't put it in my tulip bulb holes. I don't know that it adds anything to it, and there's no scientific evidence backing up that bone meal makes your bulbs bigger, your flowers better, or whatever. And it can encourage dogs and pests to come and dig up your bulbs because they're looking for a bone. That's what it is. Now, again, how deep you plant your bulbs will have a definite effect on how they grow. Now, tulips are a lot more forgiving than daffodils when we plant them in the garden. Daffodils, they kind of want to be a little more exact as far as how deep you plant them. And if you plant them too deep, they won't come up. And if you plant them too shallow, they might not perform the way you want them to. Now, the only one that I'm not going to do in big groups is my alliums because the plant itself gets a fairly big. So I'm going to plant these 6 inches apart so they will kind of look like that 1, 1, 1, 1. The rest of them, I'm going to be planting them in groups. Now, as far as spacing goes, that really is, it is about the look that you want. So I have planted them shoulder to shoulder. I have planted them like a couple inches apart. I'm not to make a line or a row of them. I don't like that look. I do know that I've seen it where you planted a row and then a row behind it and you like go every other and zigzag them. I think it's just easier to group them together. I'm all for what's going to be the easiest way to plant them. So, you know, it's about the look that you're going for. That's going to determine how you put them in the ground. Why am I itching? You also want to water your bulbs in when you're done, and it is a great idea to put straw, mulch, something on top of them to protect them. So you want to do that at the very end. Okay, so for me, I am going to be planting some alliums, some of the Purple Sensation. I am going to be planting a mixed color bag of hyacinths. I have some red tulips along with that color blend that I'm going to do. I have some crocus, and I'm going to do the purple and the white. These are the ones that come up really super early and are real low to the ground. So I'm definitely going to put these in a place where I can see them because it's probably still going to be really cold out and I probably won't be in the garden. So I'll plant these where I can see them. I'll also probably put them maybe near some Lenten rose because these pair up well with those and kind of bring your attention to the Lenten rose. And then I also have a purple tulip that I'm going to plant. And then I have those daffodils that I showed you. So that's pretty much everything that I brought over that I know I'm going to be putting in my garden. And now we're going to get up, walk around, and we're going to look for those places to put them. Now, I will talk about this part next year because you'll totally forget what I'm telling you right now. But another good time to fertilize your bulbs is after they're done flowering next year. And that's going to help them produce that energy that they need for the following year's growth. So I fertilize them now, and then I'm going to fertilize them when I first see tips coming up, and then I'm going to fertilize them when they're all done. So 3 times I'm going to fertilize my bulbs. Now, if you miss one of these, it's not the end of the world. It's not like your flowers won't come up, but they won't be and perform to their max performance, and that's what you're going for. The other thing that happens with, especially tulips, if they come back every year for you and the squirrels didn't get them all, they have a tendency to get overcrowded in their little planting area. So they might need to be divided every 2 to 3 years. And that is when you're going to see like smaller flowers, or maybe they're thinning out. So if the squirrels didn't get them, it might be that they're just crowded and they need to be divided. You don't see that so much in the smaller bulbs and the daffodils. I've never really moved my daffodils around, but I have had to move my tulips before. So if you have that going on where your clumps get all crowded, you wait till the foliage turns yellow, and then you dig your clump up, divide it, and then just replant. And then it'll just go through the cycle all over again. I don't know what was going on there. My face started itching like mad, so I went inside and washed my face. I don't know if I touched something or what. It seems to be better now, though, so hopefully I won't keep doing that. All right, so where was I? Oh, bulbs. Let's say that you're doing a garden renovation and you dig your bulbs up after they've turned yellow. I recommend that you at least enjoy the flowers before you dig them up. You can actually just cut those back and store them in a cool, dry place until you're ready to plant them again in the fall. So you can do that as well, but again, don't store them with fruit. Don't forget that. So your basement is a good place with that. And putting them in like the little sawdust packet or kitty litter, something like that, just to keep them dry and cool until you're ready to plant them again. So you're kind of going to get a little mini garden tour while we're going here too. So this is my sidewalk bed at the front of my house. And this is a great place for me to put daffodils. And even though I have these beautiful trees here, these are all maples. I have a red maple here and a sugar maple here. I have a crimson king maple here and another red maple down there. I still can do daffodils in the beds here because these leaves won't be on the trees when all the daffodils are blooming. So this is when I can go through and I can strategically look for places to put these. Now, this is a mountain hydrangea, so I don't cut this back because it blooms on old wood. Now, I do have all of these impatiens that are in here, but they're in bowls and they're going to get moved. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for places where I can strategically put some daffodils, and then I can hide that dying foliage back in the spring. Now, I don't cut back these either. These are oak leaf hydrangeas. So I could interplant some daffodils down below them. And then when I start to see the foliage come out on the oak leaf hydrangeas, then that will hide some of the dying daffodil foliage. So I could underplant some right through here. That would be a good place to put some. When I come down here, I can do the same thing. I could put some here because this usually has more leaves on it. It's just fall, so it doesn't have as many. This is an incredible white, and I could plant some daffodils here. I could also plant some back here where these hostas are because these will double in size next year. So I could plant some here. And again, I could plant some down here where the other oak leaf hydrangea is. So for me, I might have 3 strategic spots in this bed where I could put them. Now, I could certainly plant some back here, and I could do that. But you know what? I don't want to look at that dead and dying foliage. It doesn't look good. And I know you're thinking, well, plant them where the bowls of impatiens are. But when I plant these impatiens, 1, it's not until May. And 2, they aren't this big at the beginning. They're just a little 6-pack of impatiens. So I need them to be big fast. The next bed I want to look at is, this is my driveway bed. So this is a bed that I see all the time. Now, this Woodgillia here is a summer Monet, and I will end up cutting this, or a sunset Monet. I will end up cutting this back once it's dormant, and I'll take it probably in half. So it's going to be a lot smaller, and I'll probably limb up some of the bottom branches here. So this is a great place for me to put some tulips or hyacinths here, because as I pull up into the garage, see, I'll be able to see those, and that'll be really super nice. The other thing I have is some liatris back here, and you can see that they are done. They've been done, and that will be another good place. I could interplant among the leaves here with some smaller crocus. I don't know if I'll do something small like that, but maybe tulips or daffodils in here would be good, and then that foliage will help hide that as it's growing. Let's come around the other side. I don't interplant in the sedum. Okay, on the other side here, you can see I've got my little lime fruit punch. And so these did so much better than I thought they were going to do. At the beginning of the season, I was worried that they were going to get any size on them or any color on the flowers. And I think they've done beautiful. I don't think they're going to get any or as big as they normally would, but I think they're doing great. They just finished year 1, so they've only been in here for 1 year, but it's another place where I could strategically behind them, between the Woodgilla and here, I could strategically behind here plant some daffodils or some hyacinths or some tulips or even the alliums maybe, and then I'd have that tall allium coming up while I'm waiting for these to grow, because I will prune all of these back and take all of the spent flowers off. I usually do that in March. So in this bed, I have lots of strategic places that I could put bulbs, and it's a place that I'm going to drive up and see these bulbs. So for me, this would be a bed that I would definitely put them in. Another bed that I can put bulbs in is this front bed, but I'm probably going to wait a year to do that. I definitely will put them in here next year, but since I've cut everything back and moved everything and I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing in this bed next year, I'll wait. But the one place I will put some is right here. This is a Baptisia that I already cut back, and so this thing gets about this high, and then it gets the blue spiky flowers on it in late spring, early summer. I usually cut it back halfway through the summer. This year I cut it back a little bit later so it didn't reflush, but it's a great place to put bulbs on this whole end. I could see making this a big mass of those, the purple, the light purple, the dark purple, and the yellow tulips, like right here, just that big mass. That would be so beautiful. But then if we come into the bed over here, I don't know that I'll plant anything in here because I'm not ready. And so if you're not ready to plant, don't plunk. Although, I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's your garden, but I've made myself a promise not to plunk things in the garden without a plan. So here I'm going to wait a year and figure out what this bed is going to look like. And then next year, I'll plant some bulbs in here because I always see this bed. All right, the other area I'm in is I am in my cottage garden. Now, I don't know that I'm going to plant any bulbs out here. If I do any, it's probably going to be along this area here. It's going to be hard to get them in, though, because you don't want to cut the hibiscus back, which is what these guys are right here. I don't want to cut those back until the foliage is taken out by a hard frost. And then I can certainly strategically put a beautiful embankment of bulbs all through there. My problem is I don't know that I'll come out here to enjoy them that early in the season. So I don't know. I might think on this one for a year, but that would be a very strategic place to put them. The other place that you could put bulbs out here would be where the hyssop is in the back here, because the foliage won't be that big on the hyssop yet. And so I could put like a nice embankment of bulbs right here between the two chairs. I don't know. There's not a whole many. Well, the hollyhocks would be another good place. Like right here, I have a bank of hollyhocks, and I have some here as well. So I could interplant some bulbs in here as well. My thing is, do I want to spend the money to put bulbs in an area that I'm not going to 100% enjoy? And so I don't know that I want to do that. I think I'd rather put them in the front and in the back. So let's go look at the back for some strategic places there. Okay, here we are. We are in the back garden, and I definitely think that I could put some bulbs in here. I've got a big sub and substance hosta here, and so I could definitely put some bulbs through here. Now, the one thing I have to be really careful of, and I didn't call anybody to take care of this, and I did look it up, but I do have, I can't find it. Oh, it's right. There's a leaf on the top of it. But right here, there's a hole in the ground, and I'm not going over there to move that leaf. There's a yellow jacket's nest right there that I discovered, a ground nest in here. So I'm going to have to call somebody to eradicate that, because I looked it up to see, will they abandon the nest over the winter? And they don't. They just kind of hunker down, and then they're still in there. So I'm going to have to make that go away. But in this bed here, I've got lots of hostas where I could definitely strategically plant underneath these hostas. And I could do the layering in here as well, where I have some deeper bulbs and then some shallower bulbs based on how big the hostas get. Now this bed, I don't know how easy it is for you to see. There's a lot of leaf fall in here, but again, there's hostas in here where I could dig holes and plant. Now I am underneath a maple tree. I don't know that I want to do a whole bunch more digging in this area, because I do like to plant my annuals in here to give me my flower power. So I don't know, unless I come out like maybe towards the edges here, to maybe plant some little crocus. that I can put along the edge of the path. I do have some Lenten rose in here where I can draw attention to that. So I could see me doing that along here and maybe just a few pockets here and there. I think I'd have a tendency to go more out this way so that I can see it from the window up here. And then another excellent place for me to plant is in the two-tiered wall here. Here I have salvia that's on its second flush. Don't look at my dead plants in the pots that I need to clean out. I haven't done that yet. And here is some nepeta that I could definitely interplant. And then I've got a big area here that I had planted some eucalyptus that I need to just, I've picked it and I just need to take out the rest of it because it won't grow here in the winter. But through here I could certainly get some bulbs in here and up here in the herb garden. And you can see, even though I cut the herbs back, I mean, they're ready. I could cut them again. I have lavender and thyme and tarragon, rosemary, I have lemongrass. Look at this big bunch of sage that's still going. We've had such a mild fall that everything is still going strong. My little petite rose is still going. So look at that, my parsley's still going, even though I pulled all the basil out. So I could definitely interplant through here and find some very strategic places, even amongst the Hakone grass here. The Hakonocloa, this is the areola. I could plant it within there too. I mean, and I would totally be able to hide that. Some combinations you can try if you have some soft pastel tulips and you have ground cover phlox. These are beautiful planted together because they kind of bloom at the same time. And I like the pinks, and then they always have those nice pastel colors on the garden phlox. So that's a nice combination. Here's another picture of another combination that you could do of phlox and tulips. I just think they look good together. These are actually the slides off of my slideshow that I use when I present this class. So I just think that that's so pretty underneath that little white birch. They just look so cheerful and happy. This picture here I actually took at my other house. This was a tulip that we planted with some woodland phlox on the edge of the woods. And so they intermingled so beautifully together, and then they bloomed at the same time. And that was a nice pairing at the edge of the woods. This is also a picture from my other house, and I've got a forsythia that's just starting to bloom in the background with those orange and yellow striped tulips with the grape hyacinths underneath. I just think I loved this color combination. I had this one little patch backside of my patio, and it was so cheerful every time you went outside and you saw this. Even though they're, opposite on the color wheel, they're a total contrast, and it was so cool. This color combination, I loved this. Another one you can try is taller tulips with shorter tulips, and see how you've got that nice bold dark pink, and then you've got the softer white below with the same pink in it that pulls your eye down. But then you've got, the short ones with the tall ones. So that's a nice combination as well. Here's some beautiful pink tulips with some forget-me-nots, purple and pink together, whether it's tulips together or crocus and tulips or whatever. Tulips are the same way. You can find early, mid, and late bloomers. So you can sometimes time it if you get early blooming tulips with late blooming daffodils, that they'll bloom together. But this is such a classic color combination, and it always is so beautiful. This is also at my other house, and these were planted along the south foundation of my house. So I always got these really super early because the ground would warm up early there. I also had daffodils planted on the north side of my house, and those always bloomed a lot later because the ground was still cold over there, so it took them a little longer to take off. So keep that in mind too if you're doing foundation plantings, which ones warm up first, because that might encourage them to bloom a little bit earlier or later, depending on what you're looking for. Someday I'll get my gardens here to how the gardens were at my other house. This is also a picture at my other house. Oh look, there's my blue, red, yellow, green all in one area. So again, see how I have the daffodils blooming the same time as the tulips? We've got some candy striped phlox down on the ground, and then a blue globe spruce, and then the tree right there, that's a prairie fire crab. But this was a beautiful combination. It was on the sidewalk, so you walked by it every time you went into the house. Loved it. Now remember, tulips come in different shapes too. There's parrot tulips, there's Darwin tulips, there's those exotic tulips, there's ones with frilly petals. So there's all different kinds of shapes as well. So don't be afraid to experiment with the different shapes that are out there along with the colors. This was also at my other house. And then there you go. There's your little splash of color. They're low growing. Crocus are those very first things to bloom outside of Lenten rose, that when you're jonesing for some color in the garden, crocus will definitely fill the bill for you. Now, this is something that I would love to try and copy in my own garden here if I decide to create another garden with the purple sensation alliums and the white alliums, the lupines in there. In the forefront, you've got iris. I mean, I just think that this is, oh, I think this is fabulous. I would love to try and duplicate something like this in my garden. I love the different shapes and sizes, colors, and structures of all of these plants. This would be a spectacular late spring, early summer look in the garden. So I don't have a lot of pictures of bulbs in my garden here where I live now because I don't have one bulb in the ground. This year will be the very first time that I'm putting any in, and I think I'm to the point where, you know, I had to kind of live with my beds for a little bit to make sure I liked some of them, and you saw some of them I love, some of them I don't love, because I want to strategically plant, one, so that I see them and I enjoy them, and two, so that I don't have to worry about that ugly foliage when they're dying back. I can strategically hide that. So this will be the first year that I'm putting in, and I'm looking forward to the show that we're going to create in the spring. I'm not going to probably do everything that I want to do. I'll probably do some this year, add some next year. Those pictures that I showed you of my other garden at my other house, I didn't do that in one season. That was like over a succession of 6 and 7 years, planting different bulbs around the garden until I had this great spring show. And I'll probably have to do the same thing here, where I'm going to add things every single year to create that spring show that's going to be absolutely gorgeous. And again, here, I don't always have the best luck with my tulips coming back, or the squirrels not squirreling away with them. So I usually have to replant tulips every single year. I showed you that one picture that had the woodland phlox with the one tulip. When I first planted that, that was like a bed of 10 tulips. And in the end, like the next year, there was one tulip left. And that happens. So I always have to prepare for that so that I'm not disappointed in the show the following year. So I hope this was helpful. And again, I'm probably not going to plant all of these at the same time. I'm going to go around and probably, you know, on my lunch hour, get some done here and get some done there. And I'll probably spread it out over 2 weeks until I get them all planted. Because right now, between flipping the store for Christmas, putting up the Christmas walk, and then I still have the gardens to clean up and the videos to make, I won't have time, like one whole day, to devote to planting bulbs. I wish I did, but I don't. So I'll end up just doing it in little stages. Plus, you know, I want to sell as many as I can in the store, and I'm only going to plant the leftovers. So that might change what I'm doing, but I hope this video helped you maybe strategically look at your garden for a better way to plant your bulbs so that you don't have to look at the dead foliage as it's dying back. So I'm Michelle. Thanks so much for watching. Keep on gardening, you guys, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.